Hello everyone, Jesse from Property Now here, bringing you another Property Now podcast. And today I'm lucky to be joined by licensee of Property Now and Property Now part owner Andrew Blackett.
G'day, Jess.
How are you doing today?
I'm great, mate.
Good to hear. So today we're going to be talking about a few of realestate.com's rules that they have in regards to what you're allowed to place on your listing. And I kind of want to talk about, I guess, almost the morality of sort of the portal itself and what they allow people to do on their listing, what they allow private sellers to do in regards to what they allow agents to do.
I'm just going to throw this at you. Rupert could be listening.
Rupert's always listening.
Yeah. So, you can't. We love Rupert, right?
Rupert's my favourite. So one of the big things, we'll open this with a really sort of a broad topic, but one of the big things that we get spoken about a lot and people have an issue with is that they're not allowed to put their personal contact number in their listing description or images.
Why not?
I don't know. Well, okay, listen, we both do know why not.
Yes.
Now, do you want to elaborate on?
I was being sarcastic.
Yeah, of course.
It's been a rule as long as I can remember. It's always been a rule. It's an agent-centric site, meaning it was always designed from the ground up to be only for agents. In fact, before we started Property Now, it literally was, and in a way still is, only for agents. They wouldn't allow private sellers on, and they still don't, but they allow agent-assisted private sellers, which to our audience, anyone selling their house with us, it's the same thing. But, they don't allow private sellers. So if somebody rings up realestate.com this afternoon and says, hi, I'm Bob, I want to list my property for sale. No, sorry, you've got to go to an agent, So that's where that's why we started Property Now, because it was private sellers were persona non grata. They couldn't get on realestate.com, which meant you couldn't reach the biggest market, which meant you couldn't sell your property effectively. You could sell it, but you wouldn't sell it for a good price because you wouldn't reach most of the market. Why they don't allow private sales and phone numbers on, whenever I've asked realestate.com, it's been the same response for at least the last 10 years, and that is that they see private sellers as third-party people. I don't understand. I mean, I understand, semantically what that means, but it's a load of nonsense. All of their clients are agents whose clients are sellers, and without sellers, realestate.com wouldn't have a site. But yet they treat private sellers as second-class citizens in the sense that they won't let them on directly for selling.
Yeah, even though they have the required party, they have the house that needs to be sold.
They're essential. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So there's this sort of tacit arrangement, convenient arrangement that realestate.com make with real estate agents, the unspoken arrangement, I guess you'd say, that you support us by giving us your listings, real estate agents, and we'll support you by keeping private sellers off the site.
Essentially, it's not a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's maintaining the status quo in a sense, that the private selling doesn't probably take off in the way that it could.
Yeah, well, especially when they control the media that talks about the sales, and obviously realestate.com's owned by News Limited, and Domain used to be owned by Fairfax, and that was all gobbled up by Channel 9. So you got all the major media groups owning the two big portals, so you're not going to hear about private sales. But from a practical point of view, you just can't put your phone number in, you can't put your email address in the description. But we've solved that, haven't we, Jesse?
Yeah, we have an inquiry system that really circumvents the need to do that. Basically, in case anyone doesn't know the way our inquiry system works, is that whenever you list a property, we put a little bit of text at the top and bottom of your description, which has a 4-digit code on it. And funnily enough, we can put our 1300 number on the listing, which is also present there. So you can call that number, which is allowed to be there because that's the number of the agency. It's not your personal number, which is what they actually prohibit. So you call the 1300 number, you're then asked to put in the inquiry code for the property that you're inquiring on. You'll put in the inquiry code, and then the contact details for the seller will be then sent to the buyer straight away, and an inquiry notification will then be sent to the seller. So you'll be updated and say, hey, you've received an inquiry, someone has called and about your property. And as long as they don't have their number hidden, you'll be then able to call them back or email them back or whatever. There's also an email template at the bottom of any of these portals, such as realestate.com or Domain, where you can simply input the text of your inquiry and then just hit send, and then the inquiry is sent out via email, and that's obviously forwarded onto the seller straight away. So it's really not a factor, but it is a source of frustration. People want their number on the listing. They want that that initial straight point of contact. So it feels, and we've been fighting, like whenever a client comes to me and talks to me about this and says, I want to have my number on the listing, it's like, I agree with you entirely. I wish you could. I mean, it would make our job easier. Obviously, we wouldn't need to have this system in place. I mean, it works completely fine. It's been doing so for years. It's a great system, but we wouldn't need to have it if we could just have your number there. That would be great. Everyone would win, but unfortunately, due to the sort of arbitrary rules, they just won't allow it.
Some people actually prefer it. Some of our clients actually say, I don't want my number on there. So
plenty.
Yeah, there's plenty. It's a smaller amount than would prefer to have their number on, but so there's foot in both camps. But we've got it covered either way with this inquiry system because it's just so efficient. Because, in a normal agent sale, you may not be able to even get on to the agent for several hours, if not days. This way, you can pretty quickly, assuming an owner's responsive, you can get a really quick answer via phone or email, in the majority of cases. So it's convenient. We've set up a really functional, efficient system for inquiries.
I'm curious if you have sort of any knowledge of any sort of prior cases of anyone who's gone to fair trading as a private seller and sort of debated whether they should be allowed to list on realestate.com, because I wonder if it would be considered a monopoly. Yeah,
well, not with fair trading. That's not their jurisdiction. It'd be the ACCC, and it was tested in 2010 because realestate.com tried to prevent private selling, as you know the history, Jess, and Property Now went single-handedly to the ACCC, and we got told no. It's realestate.com, it's their site. They can do as they wish. We went a little bit higher in the ACCC, and they told us again. Another lawyer in the ACCC said, no, it's their site, they can do what they want. Well, that obviously wasn't the case, and we were desperate to keep our industry alive that we started, because we'd been running it for 4 years by this time. And so we went up to the top of the ACCC and we argued anti-competitive behaviour under Section 46C of the Trade Practices Act, as it was known then. And the great thing is we won. We've never been knocked off realestate.com in 17 years. The tragedy is they weren't, realestate.com wasn't taken to task. They just had to admit that they were wrong, which they did in a statement. The statement went from their CEO went something like, we recognise, actually word for word, we recognise that we have been out of step with industry regulatory practices in relation to private sales. So they basically put up their hands and said, caught with our fingers in the cookie jar, we've got to allow private sales, but we're not going to really, And they didn't get fined, and that means that some of the behaviour in the intervening years has been less than ideal from them,
And so if you spoke to a representative of realestate.com and you asked them, why does it have to be an agency-assisted sale? Why can't it be a private sale? What would the response be? What would the argument be as to why?
It's always the same response. They're third party to realestate.com. They see the general public as third party. That's been the response for over a decade. And there's, like many things with realestate.com, you can't, you just have to intuit a lot of things. You can't find solid arguments or evidence of certain practices because they will hide under the we don't discuss competitors, for example, or privacy concerns. So it's very hard to get straight answers. But on that one, we got a really straight answer. Members of the public are I was going to say second-class citizens, but again, can't say that. We don't know who could be listening. They're seen as third party. Right, so that's the stock answer that we're given. So we had to create, at great expense, a really functional inquiry system, that was instant, and people have been really pleased with that. It works really well. But my personal thing is, they should be allowed to put their phone number in. Yeah. And then if you don't want to, that's fine. That's a different thing. You've got choice. So, but just don't do it, guys. Don't put your phone number in the descriptions if you're selling privately on real estate or common domain. And not only that, but don't put emails or any. First of all, as we said in another podcast.
Well, any personal contact details are prohibited. So which would be your name, your number, or your email address, or anything else that would be, under that category, really. Yeah. But those are the main things to look out for. Definitely nothing. It is funny because, of course, our email address, our phone number is completely fine. Unfortunately, you can't do it. on your own, which is
and if you put clickable, if you put a URL, a web
like
address
a hyperlink,
in the description, that's also a no. You can't do that. You'll get banned for that. But also, people would have to copy and paste it anyway. So whereas if you put a video tour URL, if you put it in the right spot on Property Now, and hence it's in the right spot on realestate.com, A, it's in the right spot, and B, it's suddenly clickable as opposed to having to copy and paste and getting banned.
I'm curious, do you ever think, and if so, when private sellers really will ever be allowed on realestate.com of their own sort of volition?
When a CEO decides that they can blame Property Now for creating private sales and that they can say, well, they're already on our site now, so we have to do it.
Right.
There's a prediction for you, Jesse.
Okay.
When they figure out that they can get as much money from the public as they currently get from agents whose money is the public, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that seems almost common sense that they would be able to do that. I mean, it seems more rational to just allow private sellers,
but agents
and
would
just to charge them even.
Agents would abandon them though. This is the worry for realestate.com, and it's a valid. If you think about what makes realestate.com powerful, it's a part of it at least is having the majority of listings in Australia. But there's other sites that have a majority of listings. They have the most, but there's others.
Domain being the other big competitor.
Even some really lesser known ones have many, many listings, but they don't have the traffic to the site.
Right.
So, but all the traffic in the world to realestate.com wouldn't matter if they didn't have listings. And if agents abandon them because realestate.com became private seller centric, you'd have to be a very brave CEO to go direct to the public for private sales. But when they do, I'm sure that we'll get the blame. Like we have private sellers on the site now, which we correctly term agent assisted private sellers. So it'll possibly happen one day.
Yeah. Hopefully in the not so distant future, I would like Australians to have the freedom to do that.
Yeah,
it just seems like
yeah, exactly.
It seems like common sense that it should be allowed. It's such we don't really have this in many other aspects of life, I don't think, anymore. With these sort of arbitrary rules that just seem to be really restrictive.
Yeah.
On the topic, no personal contact details. Another one that we mentioned quite a bit is no price baiting. Would you like to expand on what that is?
Now we're getting into the realm of fair trading law too. You have to portray a price that is genuine and within a certain range, usually 10% of an accepted range. Price betting is typically associated with auctions, but it need not be. It's any false or misleading advertising such that it'll make me respond to an ad that I couldn't reliably say was.
But I otherwise wouldn't.
Otherwise wouldn't. Correct. Yeah. So it's baiting. We're all familiar with clickbait on the net. Well,
essentially the same thing.
Essentially the same thing. Yeah, and it wastes people's time and makes people rightfully angry. And it should be banned. That's one of the good rules,
Yeah. Just to expand on that, I think it's universal for a rule in real estate on realestate.com, but it's certainly a legal rule in most states in the country that, as Andrew mentioned, you must if you upload a price range to your listing, they must be within 10% of each other, these two numbers. So just to give an example of what this would be, let's say we have the listing at 500,000. We couldn't have that as over the other opposite side of that range. Couldn't be over 550,000. That would be the maximum range.
Yeah.
For anything over that would be more than 10%, just to give an idea of how exactly that works. So I have had a few clients try to put ranges of multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars that is far exceeding 10%, which is obviously another no-no. Some other rules that they have, quite a few in regards to images. So no text to be placed on images or collages. Yeah. Trying to think what sort of text we often see people try to, or they often
bedroom
want
1,
to
bedroom
put.
2, this sort of thing.
To be fair, they're not as strict with this as they are with other things. Now, obviously, to keep your listing completely safe, to make sure it doesn't break any of their rules and they're not going to remove it, which is the last thing you want, we recommend fully abiding by all their rules at all times. And to be honest, we also check listings when changes are made to them to make sure that they are conforming to realestate.com's rules. But they aren't as heavy-handed with that usually as they are with some of the other ones.
Good example of an image that would catch their attention and get you banned would be, let's say you've got a business, you're selling a house, but you've got a business and you park your lorry out the front or your car out the front with all the signage, and that takes up, half the image. Well, they don't want to be using their significant traffic or their website visitors so that, you can promote a business. Notwithstanding, they've got commercial real estate and real commercial where, it's probably a bit more lenient that way. But the images have to be, just like any external websites on realestate.com, any website links, they have to be essentially fully about the property for sale. They can't be about my hairdressing business or something like that.
This one actually goes without saying as well, as it kind of leads into that first point that we mentioned, but references to private selling and private sales also cannot be put on your listing description, which is obvious as you are not allowed to be on the platform as a private seller. That one kind of goes without saying.
Like censorship, doesn't it?
Almost a little bit, just a touch.
Oh dear.
You could probably make the argument that perhaps it is.
Good thing it never goes to court, isn't it, really?
Another one, this one is nobody's really in the wrong here, and I understand it from both points of view. Your listing must be listed under the correct legal address.
Yeah, that's a fair trading law as well as real estate.com's rule.
The correct legal address being the address that is on the rates notice of your property. Now, the issue with this is we often have times people who are listing a property and they have their property's in a very small suburb that they're worried that people are not going to search for when they're searching for a property. I can't think of one of these suburbs off the top of my head, but a very small suburb, perhaps next to a much bigger one, and they want to list under the bigger one. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to do this. Your listing must be listed under the exact legal address. Do you have anything you'd like to talk about that or?
Just that our hands are tied, Jesse, as you've said, because you've got realestate.com's terms of service that state it has to be the correct legal address, and then you've got, far more importantly, fair trading's laws state the same thing. And the Minister for Fair Trading about 20 years ago in New South Wales famously stated in relation to this that a property can't exist at two different addresses, right? No. So there's a little village outside of Temora where I was born called Springdale, and let's say I was selling in Springdale. Well, I can't say if it's 15 View Street Springdale, I can't say 15 View Street Temora, under any of the laws
it is misleading.
What, you mean Springdale? It's a lovely place. What are you talking about?
It is unfortunate because you do understand why someone would want to, and especially when they're right next to each other, these suburbs.
Yeah.
The thing I would like to mention, I suppose, is that when someone's searching on realestate.com, if you're familiar with the system at all, there's a little box called surrounding suburbs. Now, when that is ticked, if you're, let's say, you're searching for Temora and you click that surrounding suburbs icon, when you're searching through the properties, the Springdale property, if it is within roughly, it depends on where exactly, if it's metropolitan or if it's rural, but if it's usually within about 6 to 7 or so kilometres.
Is it that much?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It will show up as a surrounding suburb.
Right, okay.
So usually your property is coming up for these.
Yeah, we should
searches.
try and get a definitive on that. I thought it was about a kilometre, but I don't know.
I think it is quite a bit larger than a kilometre. I actually have, somewhere on my computer, I have the information because I got into live chat with realestate.com once and I said, can you please tell me exactly
I'd love to know
what this is. I have it somewhere. I can send it to you. Maybe we'll mention it in another podcast.
Just on that topic, I did a search with a client this morning and we put in the suburb and it came up with 5 properties, but then we put in, the default setting, by the way, it's, as you said, is the surrounding suburbs are ticked, and then it went up to 86. So, but that was an inner city type of place.
Yeah,
so,
I think I think there are 3 different ranges, so I think you might be quite correct in like a metropolitan area. I think it's like maybe 1.5 to 2, and then there's maybe somewhere between 3 and 4, and then when you get quite rural, it's quite a large number. It's 7 or 6 or 7 kilometres.
There used to be a keyword search on realestate.com.
There still is.
So you could, you can put in, let's say you had a place that's close to Toowoomba, but it wasn't in Toowoomba, and you could drop the keyword of Toowoomba in.
Definitely make mention of it in the listing description. And then if people are searching via the keyword, your property will come up. So that's a very important way to, all these ways to sort of abide by the rules, as you totally should, and this is a totally logical rule rule as well, but to sort of get the advantages of if you hadn't, essentially, while still following the rules. Because that one is really unfortunate when people live in those very tiny little suburbs.
Frustrating, yeah, definitely. But we can't do anything about it, and nor can any agent legally do anything about it. So, you're not disadvantaged because you're a private seller. It's literally the law. You've got to put in the correct legal address.
For what it's worth, most people, in my experience, will search for surrounding suburbs. It's rare that people think, I must live in this, it has to have this suburb on the address of the property. Usually if the right property comes up and it's nearby, it's the overall area that they want, and so they're happy to live in a sort of a similar place nearby.
Yeah, and the first thing that you're asked to do on realestate.com when you go to the front page is put in a suburb or town, and then a list of things comes up. But some people say, somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago that I wanted to be found for greater such and such, let's say it was greater Surfers Paradise or something. And I explained to the guy that, okay, that's not really possible, on realestate.com, generally speaking. But if it is possible, then suddenly, you're found there. But now you've got 100,
2,000.
Way more listings. You're going to be on page 90.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter anyway.
No, it doesn't matter.
It defeats the purpose.
Yeah, if you go into a search right now as a listener and go search, greater region, Surfers Paradise, or one of these sort of areas, you'll find that there are quite literally usually thousands of listings. So it's not really particularly beneficial for you.
A lot of people are going to drive around an area that they're thinking of living in, and so they'll know the local town or suburb anyway, because they will. They're going to look for where schools are and, what the facilities are. So they're going to do a drive, and then they'll translate that to a real search because they'll be in that suburb.
What they often do is use the map feature.
Yeah, exactly.
So they head onto realestate.com, put in, let's say, 2 to 3 bedrooms for 5 to 600 or whatever.
Yeah.
And they'll zoom in, go to the area near the school or whatever where they're looking for, zoom in and refresh the search there. Yeah. And then little red dots will appear for everywhere that there's a property for sale in those areas. So that's how I find, especially now, it's, again, since I started working here, this has become a much greater trend of how people tend to search for their properties. And that's always a good thing to keep sort of in touch with, as well as how people are going about finding their properties and searching for them at any given time.
And I think, is it true that if you hide the address that Google Maps will put your property just by default in the middle of the suburb? I think it's true. So that's another reason to be careful if you're hiding the address, because
actually, it'll give a false. I think it's worse than that. I believe if you hide your address, you will be omitted entirely from the map.
Okay, yeah.
So I've had quite a few clients contact me and say, why aren't I appearing on the map? And of course, you have the address hidden. Yeah. So, you can't hide the address and then show exactly where it is on a pinpoint map. People know the address.
Think twice before getting too funky with hiding stuff. Yeah.
But that just about covers all the main rules for realestate.com and the rules that you need to sort of follow. But if you have any confusion about any of these rules and you're not sure if you're sort of obeying the rules from realestate.com, please do get in contact with us. support@propertynow.com.au is the email address, and we're happy to answer any questions. Or send you right to realestate.com, where you can talk to them about it directly if you think that you're maybe not in breach, or if there's something that's a bit grey and you're not sure about it. But until then, though, thanks very much for joining me, Andrew.
My pleasure, Jesse. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for listening, and have a great day.